The great chamber of the Galactic Council sat at the heart of Nexera Prime, a world so old that its mountains had turned to dust and been rebuilt 3 times over. The chamber itself was a wonder of ancient engineering. Its walls curved upward like the inside of a giant egg, covered in living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, that crystal glowed a soft purple, the color of mild amusement. Ambassador Yuna stood alone on the petitioner's platform, a small circle of white stone in the center of the vast room. Around her, rising in endless tiers, sat the representatives of 112 spacefaring species. Some looked almost human, with 2 arms and 2 legs and faces that could smile. Others were clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields. A few were simply lights that pulsed when they spoke. All of them were old. All of them were powerful. And all of them were looking at her like she was a child who had wandered into a meeting of kings. Yuna kept her back straight and her face calm. She was 34 years old, born on a spaceship between stars, raised on stories of Earth and its blue oceans that she had never seen. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her dark eyes showed nothing of the anger building in her chest. "Your request for membership is denied," said High Arbiter Velox. His body was made of living crystal, the same material as the walls, and his voice rang through the chamber like a bell. "The Council has reviewed humanity's petition. We find it lacking." Yuna had expected this. She had prepared for this. But hearing the words still hurt. "May I ask why, High Arbiter?" she said, keeping her voice level. Velox's crystalline face shifted, forming something like a smile. "Because you are children, Ambassador. Your species discovered fire only yesterday, in cosmic terms. You achieved spaceflight when the Vorathi were already building their 3rd empire. The Morvax had mapped half the galaxy before your ancestors learned to write." From the upper tiers, a sound rippled down. It took Yuna a moment to realize it was laughter. Dozens of species laughing at her. At humanity. At everything her people had struggled to build. "With respect," she said, "age does not determine capability." The laughter grew louder. Delegate Thrin of the Morvax Collective rose from her seat. She was tall and thin, with 6 arms that moved like dancing snakes and skin that shifted between blue and silver. Her people had been traveling between stars for 6 million years. To her, humanity was less than an insect. "The child speaks of capability," Thrin said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Tell me, Ambassador, what capability do you offer? Your species controls 1 system, 1. The Morvax control 40,000. The Vorathi control 60,000. Even the humble Cressix, who we consider a minor species, control 500 worlds. We are new to the stars," Yuna admitted. "But we learn quickly." "Learn quickly?" Thrin's 6 arms spread wide in mock surprise. "Let me tell you what I know of humanity. You left your homeworld 60 years ago in ships made of metal and hope. You have sent perhaps 50 vessels into the void. Your largest ship, the one you call the Taiguk, carries 30,000 of your people through space at speeds we consider laughably slow. This is not capability, Ambassador. This is a primitive species taking its first stumbling steps." Yuna's hands curled into fists at her sides. "The Taiguk represents 17 years of travel. 30,000 people who left everything they knew to build a new home. That takes courage." "Courage?" High Arbiter Velox leaned forward, his crystal body catching the light. "The galaxy does not reward courage, young one. It rewards power. And humanity has none." Another delegate spoke up, this one a sphere of swirling orange gas. "What do you actually want from us, Ambassador? We have heard your petition for membership, and we have denied it. Surely you have other requests." Yuna took a breath. This was the real reason she had come. Membership was a dream for the future. But her people needed help now. The Taigak is traveling through the outer systems, she said. We request patrol support through contested space. The Drift Raiders operate in those regions. Our ship has only basic defensive systems. If the Raiders attack, the laughter returned, louder than before. High Arbiter Velox held up a hand for silence. You want us to protect you from the Drift Raiders? Ambassador, the Raiders are a minor nuisance. They prey on the weak and the foolish. If your ship cannot defend itself, perhaps it should not have ventured into deep space. We are not asking for much, Una pressed on. Just a few patrol ships to escort us through the most dangerous region. It would take your people only... No. Velox's voice was final. The Council does not waste resources protecting species that cannot protect themselves. This is the law of the galaxy, young one. The strong survive. The weak do not. If humanity wishes to join the community of spacefaring peoples, it must first prove it deserves to exist. The crystal walls pulsed with red, the color of dismissal. The audience was over. Una stood frozen on the platform as the delegates began to leave their seats, already forgetting about her. She was nothing to them. Humanity was nothing to them. A brief entertainment, a moment of amusement in their ancient lives. Delegate Thrin paused as she passed, her 6 arms folded across her chest. A word of advice, Ambassador. Return to your little ship. Go back to your little world. In 10,000 years, when your species has matured, perhaps we will speak again. Until then, do not waste our time. She walked away, her silver skin catching the light. Una remained on the platform until the chamber was empty. Then, slowly, she reached up to touch the small communicator hidden behind her ear. Captain Dowan, she said quietly. They refused. No patrol support. No recognition. We are on our own. The reply came after a moment's delay, traveling across light years of empty space. Understood, Ambassador. Then we will handle things ourselves. Una looked up at the empty seats, at the ancient chamber that had witnessed 1,000,000 petitions from 1,000,000 species. The crystal walls had returned to their neutral purple, as if nothing had happened. They called us children, she whispered. They will learn what children can do when they are forced to grow up fast. She turned and walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind her, the lights dimmed, and the Galactic Council returned to its ancient slumber, unaware that it had just made the greatest mistake in its long history. The colony ship Taiguk moved through the darkness of space like a silver fish swimming through an endless ocean. She was 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide, built to carry 30,000 human beings across the void between stars. Her hull was covered in solar collectors that drank in the light of distant suns. Her engines glowed blue at the rear, pushing her forward at speeds that the elder species called laughably slow, but that humanity called miraculous. Captain Dowan stood on the observation deck. A wide room at the top of the ship where windows curved around in a half circle. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and deep lines around his eyes from years of squinting at star charts. He had joined the Taiguk as a young engineer of 26, back when the ship was still being loaded with supplies in orbit around Earth. Now, 37 years later, he commanded her behind him. The door hissed open. He did not turn around. He knew who it was by the soft sound of her footsteps. Status report, he said. Lieutenant Nari walked up to stand beside him. She was young, only 29, born on the ship during the first year of the journey. She had never seen Earth except in photographs and videos. To her, the Taiguk was home, and the stars outside were her backyard. All systems are running well, Captain, she said, looking at the tablet in her hands. The hydroponics bays report good crop growth. Dr. Taiwu says the children born this year are healthy. The gravity training is working. No signs of bone weakness. Do-hwan nodded slowly. After 17 years in space, the Taigak had become more than a ship. She was a city, a nation, a world of her own. Babies had been born here. Old people had died here. Marriages had been celebrated in the common halls, and funerals had been held in the quiet chapel near the stern. The people of the Taigak were no longer simply passengers traveling to a new planet. They were a people with their own culture and their own way of life. "And what news from Ambassador Yuna?" he asked. Nari's face darkened. The council refused again. No patrol support. No recognition. They said we should come back in 10,000 years. Do-hwan laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. 10,000 years. The elder species love to talk about time. They have so much of it that they have forgotten what it means to be in a hurry. He turned from the window and walked to the center of the observation deck, where a holographic display showed the Taiguk's current position. They were in the outer systems now, far from any major civilizations. The nearest council patrol was 6 light years away. If something happened here, no one would come to help them. "Harmony," he said, speaking to the ship's AI. The crew had named her grandmother because her voice was warm and kind, like the old women who told stories to children back on Earth. "What is our current situation?" The AI's voice came from speakers hidden in the walls. "Captain, I must report something unusual. I am detecting energy readings at the edge of our sensor range. 12 ships moving in a pattern that matches known Drift Raider attack formations." Nari's face went pale. "Drift Raiders? Here?" The Drift Raiders were the nightmare of the outer systems. They were not a single species, but a collection of pirates and criminals from dozens of worlds, united only by their love of violence and their hunger for slaves. The elder species tolerated them because they never attacked council members. But humanity had no such protection. "How long until they reach us?" Do-hwan asked. His voice was calm, but his heart was beating fast. At their current speed, approximately 17 hours. 17 hours. Not enough time to run. The Taiguk was fast for a colony ship, but she could not outrun military vessels. Not enough time to call for help, either. The nearest friendly species was weeks away. Do-hwan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were hard as stone. "Wake the Defense Council," he said. "All senior officers to the war room in 30 minutes. And find Chief Engineer Jisoo. Tell her it's time." Nari looked confused. "Time for what, Captain?" Do-hwan walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy on the metal floor. "Time to show the galaxy what humans are really made of." The Taiguk had been traveling for 17 years, and in all that time, no one from the elder species had ever asked to inspect her interior. Why would they? She was a primitive vessel, they said. A metal box held together with wire and prayer. Nothing worth looking at. They had never wondered why the ship was slightly heavier than her design plan suggested. They had never noticed the extra power conduits running through her hull. They had never asked about the sealed cargo bays that appeared on no official manifest. Humanity had left, Earth knowing one simple truth: the galaxy would not welcome them. The elder species would see them as insects, as children, as prey. And so, while the politicians talked about peace and cooperation, the engineers of Earth had prepared for war. In the 17 years since leaving home, the people of the Taiguk had not been idle. They had been building, training, preparing. For the day when someone decided that 30,000 human lives were worth taking, that day had come, and the Drift Raiders had no idea what was waiting for them. Captain Do-hwan reached the door of the observation deck and paused, looking back at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, 12 enemy ships were racing toward his people. Confident in their power, certain of their victory, they would learn differently. "Harmony," he said quietly. Begin tactical preparations. Authorization code Do177 Echo. The AI's voice replied, warm but serious. Understood, Captain. Waking all defensive. Cargo Bay 12 was located deep in the belly of the Taiguk, far from the living quarters and the common areas where families gathered. It was listed in the official records as a storage area for spare parts and emergency supplies. No one had any reason to go there. No one asked what was behind its heavy metal doors. Chief Engineer Jisoo had spent 18 years making sure of that. She stood now at the center of the bay, surrounded by the senior officers of the ship. Captain Dohwan was there, his face serious. Lieutenant Nari stood beside him, her eyes wide with shock. Security Chief Minho, a big man with scars on his face and hands that had seen too many fights, stared at the scene before him without speaking. The bay was filled with machines, not the simple tools and spare parts that the manifest described. These were weapons. Massive, terrible weapons that had been built in secret, piece by piece, over 17 years of patient work. When we left Earth, Jisoo said, her voice steady, the United Fleet gave us defensive systems. Point defense lasers to shoot down small objects. Ablative armor to protect against impacts. Standard equipment for any civilian vessel. She paused and looked at the captain. But the engineers who designed this ship were not fools. We knew what waited for us in the darkness. She walked to the nearest machine and pulled away the heavy cloth covering it. Beneath was a railgun, a weapon that used magnetic fields to launch metal projectiles at incredible speeds. This one was 3 meters long, its coils thick as tree trunks, its barrel pointed at the ceiling. This can fire a tungsten rod at 3% the speed of light, Jisoo said. At that velocity, a piece of metal the size of your finger can punch through any known armor. We have 13 of these, mounted at key points throughout the hull. Lieutenant Nari's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jisoo moved to another covered shape and revealed it. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. The bomb goes off, and for a brief moment before it destroys itself, it creates a beam of energy that can cut through a warship like a knife through paper. We have 24 of these, stored in external pods, that can be deployed in seconds. She continued through the bay, showing them weapon after weapon. Kinetic kill vehicles, small missiles loaded with nothing but mass, designed to slam into enemy ships at speeds that would vaporize both target and projectile. Electronic warfare suites that could blind enemy sensors and crash their computers. Decoy drones that could make the Taiguk appear to be in 100 places at once. Security Chief Minho finally spoke. How? His voice was rough with emotion. How did you hide all this? Jisoo smiled, a thin smile without warmth. We labeled them as spare parts. Engine components. Life support systems. The galaxy looked at our manifest and saw a primitive colony ship. They never thought to look deeper. They never imagined that humans would prepare for war while speaking of peace. Captain Dohwan walked among the weapons, his hand trailing over the cold metal. The council called us children, he said softly. They said we had not earned the right to sit among them. Children survive, Jisoo said. That is what children do. They adapt. They learn. They grow teeth and claws when the world threatens them. She looked at the assembled officers, her eyes burning with fierce pride. The elder species have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. They are too old, too comfortable, too certain of their power. But humanity remembers. We have been fighting since the first human picked up a rock and used it as a weapon. Nari found her voice at last. But can we actually win? There are 12 enemy ships coming. They have trained crews and military equipment. We have farmers and teachers and children. We have 17 years of preparation, Jisoo replied. Every adult on this ship has received basic combat training. We have run drills in secret, hidden within our regular emergency exercises. Our people know their roles. They know their weapons. And most importantly, they know what they are fighting for. She pointed upward, toward the upper decks where the families lived. Up there are 30,000 human beings. Mothers and fathers. Sons and daughters. Children who have never known any home except this ship. The Drift Raiders are coming to kill some of them and enslave the rest. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. A voice hardened into steel. They will find no mercy here. Only fire. Captain Dawan turned to face his officers. You have your assignments. Lieutenant Nari, report to the Combat Information Center. You will coordinate our tactical response. Chief Minho, organize the security teams. Any raider that somehow boards this ship will be met with armed resistance at every corridor. He looked at Jisoo. Chief Engineer, how long until we can deploy? The weapons are ready now, she said. We have been ready for 17 years. All we needed was a target. Dohan nodded once. Then let us prepare to receive our guests. The galaxy wanted to see what humanity could do. Let us give them a demonstration they will never forget. The officers scattered to their posts, moving through the ship like blood through veins. The news spread quickly, whispered from person to person, family to family. The enemy was coming. The ship was in danger. But there was no panic. There was no screaming or crying or running to hide. Instead, the people of the Taigak did what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. They looked at each other, took strength from each other, and prepared to fight. In the schoolrooms, teachers calmly led children to the protected inner sections of the ship, turning it into a game so the young ones would not be afraid. In the medical bay, Dr. Taiwu prepared for casualties, his staff checking supplies and clearing beds. In the engine room, technicians ran final checks on systems that might mean the difference between life and death. And in Cargo Bay 12, Chief Engineer Jisoo stood alone among her creations, running her hand along the barrel of the main railgun. 17 years, she whispered to herself. 17 years I have kept you hidden and waiting. Now it is time to show the galaxy what Earth's children can do. The metal was cold beneath her fingers, cold as the void outside, cold as the hearts of those who thought humanity would be easy prey. The Taiguk was awake now. All of her. And she was angry. The Drift Raider fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 12 warships, each one built for speed and violence, their hulls painted with the symbols of death and conquest. Their leader, a creature called Vraxis, stood on the bridge of the largest vessel and looked at the scan of the human colony ship ahead. He was a thing of nightmares, tall and thin, with scales that changed color with his mood and teeth that could tear through metal. He had raided hundreds of ships in his long career. He had killed thousands of beings and sold tens of thousands more into slavery. He had never lost a battle. What do we know about this target? He asked, his voice like knives scraping stone. His second-in-command pulled up the data. Human colony vessel, designated Taiguk. 30,000 occupants. Minimal defensive systems. Point defense lasers only. No military escort. No council protection. Vraxis smiled, showing rows of jagged teeth. Easy prey. Send the standard message. Surrender your ship and half your people will be spared. Resist and everyone dies. The message traveled across the void at the speed of light. On the Taiguk, it was received in the Combat Information Center, where Lieutenant Nari sat surrounded by screens and holographic displays. Enemy communication incoming, she reported to Captain Doan, who stood behind her with his hands clasped behind his back. Put it on speaker, he said. The raider's voice filled the room, translated by the ship's computer into words humans could understand. Human vessel. This is Commander Vraxis of the Drift Raiders. You are surrounded. Your ship is defenseless. Surrender now, and some of you will live. Resist, and you will all die screaming. You have 10 minutes to respond." The message ended. Silence filled the room. Nari looked up at the captain. "Orders, sir?" Dohan smiled, and there was something dark in that smile, something that had been waiting 17 years to be released. "Send our response. All weapons, prepare to fire on my command." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them nothing. Let our guns speak for us." Across the ship, hidden panels began to slide open. The railguns emerged from their hiding places, their magnetic coils humming with power. The X-ray laser pods deployed from the hull, spreading out like the wings of a bird of prey. The kinetic kill vehicles sat ready in their tubes, waiting to be launched. On the Raider flagship, alarm suddenly screamed. "Commander!" The sensor officer shouted. "The human ship is changing configuration. We are detecting massive energy buildups. Weapon signatures that match nothing in our database. This is not possible." Their technical scans showed no military capability. Vraxis felt something he had not felt in centuries: doubt. "All ships, raise shields. Prepare for—" He never finished the sentence. The first railgun round left the Taiguk at 3% the speed of light. It crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. It struck the flagship's engine section and punched straight through, tearing a hole the size of a house in the armored hull. The ship shuddered and spun, its propulsion systems destroyed in a single heartbeat. "All batteries, continuous fire," Captain Dowan commanded. "Show them no mercy." The void lit up with death. X-ray lasers lanced out, cutting through raider ships like hot wire through ice. Kinetic kill vehicles shrieked toward their targets, too fast to dodge, too powerful to stop. The electronic warfare systems crashed the enemy's computers, leaving them blind and confused. In the Combat Information Center, Nari worked with cold precision, coordinating the attack. Target 3 destroyed. Target 5 disabled. Target 8 attempting evasive maneuvers. Her fingers danced across the controls. Tracking solution locked, firing. Another raider ship died. On the flagship, Raxus struggled to his feet as his vessel tumbled through space. Fires burned all around him. His crew screamed and died. Through the cracked viewport, he could see his fleet being torn apart. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. They are children. They cannot do this." But they were doing it. Security Chief Minho stood at his post near a main hall, watching the external feeds. His teams were ready to repel boarders, but no boarding parties came. There was no need. The raiders were not interested in fighting anymore. They were interested only in survival. "They are running," he reported, genuine surprise in his voice. The surviving raider ships, 5 out of 12, broke formation and fled toward hyperspace. They scattered in different directions, each captain caring only about saving himself. The neat military formation had become a panicked rout. "Do we pursue?" Nari asked. Captain Dowan considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No, let them run. Let them carry the story of what happened here. Let the entire galaxy know what happens when you attack humanity." The battle had lasted less than 20 minutes. Of 12 raider warships, 4 were destroyed completely, reduced to burning wreckage tumbling through the void. 3 more drifted powerless, their crews dead from decompression and radiation. The survivors fled into hyperspace, carrying with them the memory of their defeat. The Taiguk had taken minimal damage. A few hull breaches from return fire, easily patched. A handful of minor injuries, none life-threatening. Against all odds, against all expectations, the primitive human colony ship had crushed a military fleet. In Cargo Bay 12, Chief Engineer Jisoo watched the battle results come in and allowed herself a small smile. 17 years of work. 17 years of hiding and building and waiting. And now, finally, the galaxy knew the truth. Captain Dowan stood on the observation deck, looking out at the wreckage of the Raider fleet. Bodies floated in the void. Metal twisted and burned. It was a terrible sight, a scene of death and destruction. But he felt no guilt. Only a fierce, burning pride. The elder species had called humanity children. They had laughed at Earth's pathetic colony ships. They had refused to protect the weak and the foolish. Now they would learn that Earth's children were not weak. Earth's children were not foolish. Earth's children were the descendants of warriors and survivors, of peoples who had fought and died for millions of years, who had clawed their way up from the mud and the blood to reach the stars. "Almoni," he said quietly, "open a channel to the Galactic Council. Priority transmission." The AI responded warmly. "Channel open, Captain." Doman straightened his uniform and faced the camera that would send his image across light years of space. "This is Captain Dowan of the human colony ship Taiguk. Approximately 1 hour ago, my vessel was attacked by a drift raider fleet. I am pleased to report that the attack has been repelled. The raider fleet has been destroyed." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We did not ask for your help. We did not need your help. We protected ourselves as we have always done. Humanity does not beg. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity survives." He allowed himself a cold smile. "The next time the council meets, perhaps you will think twice before dismissing us as children. Because these children have teeth, and we are not afraid to use them." The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, the elder species began to realize that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every seat was taken. Delegates stood in the aisles and crowded the doorways. Species that had not attended a council meeting in 1,000 years had sent representatives. All of them wanted to see this. All of them wanted to hear what the humans would say. On the great central display, footage played on a loop. A primitive colony ship tearing apart a drift raider fleet. X-ray lasers cutting through armored warships. Railgun rounds punching holes in hulls that should have been impenetrable. The impossible made real. Recorded and transmitted for all the galaxy to see. High Arbiter Velox stood at his podium, his crystalline body flickering with colors that had no name in human language. Fear, confusion, anger, respect. All of them mixed together into something new. "The council will come to order," he announced. Though order seemed impossible in this chaos. "We have convened this emergency session to address the incident involving the human vessel Taiguk and the drift raider fleet." Delegate Thrin of the Morvax Collective rose from her seat. Her 6 arms were clenched tight, and her silver skin had gone dark with rage. Incident? This was an act of war. The humans brought weapons of mass destruction into Council territory without authorization. They violated countless treaties and regulations. "The humans are not members of the Council," another delegate pointed out. "They are not bound by our treaties, which is exactly why they should never have been allowed into our space in the first place." The argument continued, voices rising and falling, accusations flying back and forth. Through it all, Ambassador Yuna stood silently on the petitioner's platform, watching and waiting. She was different now. Before, she had stood there as a supplicant, begging for scraps of recognition. Now she stood as a conqueror, calm and certain, knowing that every eye in the chamber was on her. Finally, High Arbiter Velox raised his hands for silence. "Ambassador Yuna," he said, his voice echoing through the sudden quiet. "You have requested the opportunity to address the council. Speak." Yuna took a single step forward. She was small on that platform, surrounded by the towering tiers of alien delegates. But somehow, she seemed to fill the room. Thank you, High Arbiter. Her voice was steady and clear. I will keep my remarks brief, because the truth requires few words. She activated her own display, and new images appeared alongside the battle footage. Star maps, flight paths, points of light spreading across the outer systems. 1 year ago, I stood on this platform and asked for your help. I told you that the Taiguk was traveling through dangerous space. I asked for patrol support against the Drift Raiders. You refused. You called us children. You told us to come back in 10,000 years. She let those words hang in the air. Now I stand before you again, but I am not here to ask for help. I am here to tell you what humanity has accomplished while you laughed at us. The star map expanded, showing more and more points of light. The Taiguk was not our only colony ship. Over the past 60 years, humanity has launched 47 vessels into deep space. Each one carries between 10,000 and 50,000 of our people. Each one was equipped with the same defensive systems as the Taiguk. Hidden weapons, secret preparations, the will to survive. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and demands. How had they not known? How had their intelligence services missed this? How could a primitive species have deceived them so completely? Yuna waited for silence before continuing. You called us children, and you were right. We are young. Our species has existed for only 300,000 years. Our civilizations have risen and fallen in the time it takes some of your peoples to complete a single thought. She smiled, and there was steel in that smile. But you forgot what children are. Children are hungry. Children are curious. Children learn from everything around them. And most importantly, children grow. Every year, every decade, every century, we become more than we were. While your ancient empires rest on their achievements, humanity is still building, still expanding, still reaching for more. High Arbiter Velox leaned forward. What does humanity want? He asked, and for the first time, his voice held something like respect. Why have you called this assembly? We want what we asked for from the beginning, Yuna replied. Recognition, partnership, a seat at the table you denied us. And if we refuse again? Yuna's smile widened. Then we will build our own table. Our colony ships are spreading across the galaxy. In 100 years, humanity will have established dozens of new worlds. In 1,000 years, we will be an empire to rival any that exists today. In 10,000 years, when your civilizations have faded into memory, humanity will still be here. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. The Drift Raiders learned what happens when you attack humanity. They thought we were prey. They were wrong. We are not prey. We are predators who have learned to wear the mask of civilization. We are survivors who have clawed our way up from the mud and the blood of a brutal world. We are the children of Earth, and we will not be dismissed. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, a single delegate began to applaud. Then another. Then another. Within moments, the entire chamber was filled with the sound of 100 species acknowledging what they could no longer deny. Humanity had arrived. Not as beggars or supplicants, but as equals. High Arbiter Velox rose from his seat. The council will deliberate, he said formally. But I believe I can speak for many when I say that humanity has earned its place among us. Not through age or tradition, but through something far more important. And what is that? Yuna asked. Velox's crystalline face shifted into something that might have been a smile. Through the willingness to fight for your existence. Through the courage to stand alone against impossible odds. Through the determination to survive no matter what the universe throws at you. He bowed his head slightly. Welcome to the galactic community, Ambassador. We look forward to seeing what you will accomplish. 1 year later, the human embassy on Nexera Prime had become the most visited diplomatic mission in Council history. Species came from across the galaxy to learn about the strange young race that had defeated the Drift Raiders. They found humans happy to share their stories, their culture, their strange determination to keep moving forward no matter what stood in their way. Captain Dowan retired to the new colony world that the Taigak had founded. They called the planet Himang, which means hope in Korean. He spent his last years watching the sun set over purple mountains, surrounded by the children and grandchildren of those who had made the journey with him. Chief Engineer Jisoo received 17 requests to share her weapons technology. She declined them all with the same message. Perhaps in 10,000 years. Lieutenant Nari took command of the Taigak's sister ship, the Hanyul, and led her own colony mission to the far edges of known space. And somewhere in the deep void, 46 other human vessels continued their journeys, each one carrying the same quiet message to a galaxy that had finally learned to listen. Never underestimate the young. Never mock those who are still learning. Never assume that, because a species is new to the stars, they do not know how to fight, because humanity remembers what the elder species have forgotten. We remember the ice ages and the famines. We remember the wars and the plagues. We remember 10,000 years of struggle and suffering and survival. We are the children of Earth. We were born in blood and fire, and we will never, ever stop reaching for the stars.